Sir, read it before it is too late. By midnight, your signature will strip 211 retired workers of their medical cover.
The 25th anniversary of Balogun Allied Services was streaming live to thousands across Nigeria. On stage, Bode Balogun stood in a cobalt blue suit, one hand reaching for the Human-Centered Leadership Award. Then a woman screamed. Two security officers seized Sade Adeyemi and forced her to her knees on the cold marble floor. Her faded burnt orange blouse tore at the shoulder. A cream envelope slipped from her hand and skidded across the hall until Ronke Williams stopped it beneath one ruby-red heel. "Remove her," Ronke said. She was suspended for stealing confidential records. Sade raised her head. She was not begging for her job. "Sir, read it before it is too late," she shouted. "By midnight, your signature will strip 211 retired workers of their medical cover." Bode froze. Then he saw the faded blue seal on the envelope. The color drained from his face. Before we continue, subscribe. Tell us your city and local time in the comments. And do not leave. Because the truth inside that letter was about to break the most powerful man in the room. 5 days earlier, at exactly 7:13 on Monday morning, Sade Adeyemi stepped down from a Danfo bus beside the Balogun Allied Services Tower on Victoria Island. The bus conductor shouted for passengers to move quickly. A motorcycle horn screamed behind her. The smell of diesel, hot bread, and the lagoon mixed in the humid air. Sade adjusted the strap of her second-hand handbag and looked up at the glass building. 32 floors, silver letters. A revolving door that seemed to swallow people in expensive shoes. She had worked there for 11 weeks. Yet every morning, the building still made her feel as if she needed permission to breathe near it. Her contract described her as a temporary records digitization assistant. The reality was less impressive. She scanned old files. She renamed documents. She carried dusty cartons from one room to another, while permanent staff discussed promotions over coffee that cost more than her lunch. Her monthly pay was 187,000 naira before deductions. The room she rented in a compound at Jibowu cost 90,000. Transport swallowed another 32,000 when Lagos traffic became wicked. What remained had to feed her and help the aunt who had raised her. So Sade did not behave carelessly. She arrived early. She greeted everybody. She kept copies of every instruction. And she never touched a file without signing the movement register. Poor people, she had learned, were often punished, not because they had done wrong, but because they could not afford the cost of proving they were right. That Monday, the basement archive smelled of old paper and damp paint. Renovation workers had removed a row of metal cabinets from the executive correspondence room, leaving behind 3 locked drawers and a pile of folders coated in grey dust. Sade tied a pale blue scarf over her hair and pulled on gloves. At 7:41, she began counting 112 unopened envelopes, 76 internal memos, 49 vendor letters, 34 job applications, and 116 items already stamped for disposal. Her supervisor had left a typed instruction on the table. Scan everything dated within 7 years. Log anything marked personal. Send damaged documents for review. Do not destroy correspondence bearing registered post evidence. Sade read the instruction twice. Then she signed beneath it. By 9:26, her eyes were burning from dust. She had just opened the bottom drawer of a narrow cabinet when something cream-colored slid forward and landed against her shoe. It was an envelope. Not ordinary. The paper was thick but old. 3 registered post stickers covered the back. Each carried a different delivery date. September 18th, September 29, October 4. Across the front, in careful handwriting, were the words "personal," for Bode Balogun only. In the lower corner sat a faded blue circular seal, Staff Canteen Welfare Cooperative. Sade turned the envelope over without opening it. There were 3 rejection labels. Sender not authorized for executive correspondence. Duplicate welfare request. Matter previously resolved. But something did not agree. The first 2 labels had different dates, yet the same reference number. The third label had been printed on Sunday night, when the executive office was closed. Sade moved to the computer terminal and entered the tracking code. The system showed that the envelope had reached the building 3 times. On each occasion, it had been routed to the Chief of Staff's office. On each occasion, it had been sent back without a signed receipt. That was already against procedure. Then Sade noticed a handwritten line under the address. Benefit determination. Takes effect October 10 at midnight. It was Monday, October 6. 4 days. She lifted the envelope towards the light. There were several pages inside, perhaps 4 or 5, and something stiff like a card. Her fingers tightened. She could have opened it. Nobody was watching. But she did not. Privacy was not a decoration to be removed when curiosity became strong. A sealed personal letter remained sealed until the authorized person received it, unless a documented emergency process said otherwise. Sade placed it inside a transparent evidence sleeve, entered the details in the correspondence register, and wrote, "Sealed, 3 prior rejected deliveries. Urgent date stated by sender." At 10:02, she took the lift to the 29th floor. The difference between the basement and the executive corridor was almost insulting. Downstairs, 1 fluorescent tube kept blinking. Upstairs, soft lights glowed beneath cream ceilings. The carpet swallowed footsteps. Fresh flowers stood in tall glass vases. Even the air smelled expensive. A receptionist in a fitted green dress looked at Sade's orange blouse, then at the plastic sleeve in her hand. "Yes? Good morning, Ma. I have registered correspondence for Mr. Balogun. It is marked personal and urgent. Do you have an appointment?" "No, Ma. I am from records. I only need a signature for delivery." The receptionist squeezed her face. "Drop it. I will need the name and signature of the person receiving it." The woman leaned back. "My dear, this is not a village post office. We do not sign for every paper that enters this floor." Sade remained polite. "The procedure says personal registered correspondence must be signed for, Ma." Before the receptionist could answer, the glass door behind her opened. Ronka Williams stepped out. She wore a ruby-red trouser suit, gold earrings, and the expression of a person whose day had been offended by the existence of other people. Ronke was 39, sharp-faced and always controlled. She was Bode Balogun's chief of staff, the woman who controlled his diary, his briefings, his travel, his meetings, and, in practice, the road by which information reached him. Senior directors waited outside her office. Ministers returned her calls. Temporary staff lowered their voices when she passed. She looked at Sade's staff tag. "Contract worker." "What is the problem?" "No problem, Ma. I found this in an executive archive drawer. It is addressed personally to Mr. Balogun and carries an urgent deadline." Ronke's eyes moved to the faded blue seal, only for 1 second, but Sade saw it. Recognition. Then Ronke's face became smooth again. "Leave it there. Please, Ma, I need a receiving signature." Ronke gave a short laugh. "You were hired to scan dusty paper, not to decide which burden deserves the CEO's eyes. It is not my decision, Ma. That is why I brought it." The receptionist looked down, hiding a smile. Ronke stepped closer. "Do you know how many letters people send to this office every week? Some say they are dying. Some say their landlord has thrown them out. Some claim the company owes them money from 1998. If Mr. Balogun reads every crying letter, who will run the company? Sade held the sleeve firmly. This one has registered delivery evidence and a deadline 4 days away. Then give it to me. Sade offered the register and a pen. Please sign here, Ma. The corridor went still. Ronk stared at the pen, as if Sade had offered her an insult. You want my signature? Yes, Ma, to confirm receipt. So that if this rubbish causes any problem, you can point your thin finger and say Ronke Williams collected it. Sade's heartbeat quickened. That is what a receiving signature means, Ma. The receptionist coughed. One assistant suddenly became very interested in his tablet. Ronke snatched the sleeve from Sade's hand. Go back to your basement. Please, Ma, the register. Did you not hear me? Sade did not move. She needed the job. She needed the pay. She knew that one sentence from Ronke could erase her contract before lunchtime. Still, the procedure was clear. Ma, I cannot close the movement without a signature. Ronke stepped so close that Sade could smell her perfume. Listen to me carefully. People like you enter a glass building and suddenly start carrying yourselves as if education has removed your level. You are here because we needed cheap hands to move old paper. Do not confuse access with importance. Sade swallowed. I understand my role. No, you do not. If you understood it, you would know when to disappear. Ronke turned to the receptionist. Mark it received under executive review. The receptionist typed something. No signature? Sade asked. Ronke's eyes hardened. Get out. Sade returned to the basement with the empty evidence sleeve and the unsigned register. At 11:18, she entered a note into the system. Delivered to Chief of Staff's office. Physical receipt refused. Reception instructed to mark under executive review. She saved it. Then she took a screenshot and emailed the record to the shared archive mailbox, copying her supervisor. It was not rebellion. It was protection. Up on the 29th floor, Ronke stood alone in her office and examined the envelope. She knew the sender, Ruth Johnson, former canteen manager, former Welfare Cooperative Committee member, 31 years of service, retired in 2021. A woman who had already sent 4 emails, 3 registered letters and 1 petition through the Retirees Association. A woman who refused to become quiet. Ronke did not open the envelope immediately. She placed it on her desk beside a blue folder marked Q4 Benefit Transition. The folder contained a performance report. 98.7% transition success. Projected annual savings of 86.4 million naira. 0 unresolved high-risk complaints. Those numbers were the foundation of Ronke's next promotion. They were also tied to a substantial performance award and a recommendation for an executive board seat. If Ruth's letter reached Bode before Friday, the report might be questioned. If the report was questioned, the benefit administrator might be audited. And if that audit followed the money far enough, it might reach a consulting company controlled by Ronke's elder brother. She picked up her phone. Close reference Bau 211 as duplicate, she said. Use the dormant resolution code. A male voice hesitated. Ma, the records team has already logged physical delivery, then changed the status after lunch. What reason? Ronke looked through the glass wall at the city below. Previous matter resolved. And the envelope. She glanced at the shred bin beside her cabinet. Leave that to me. At 12:30, Bode Balogun stood before a camera in the executive media room. He had changed into a navy suit for the recording. Behind him was the company's anniversary logo and the words, People Before Roofit. Bode was 46, broad-shouldered, calm, and famous for making difficult decisions without raising his voice. Under his leadership, Balogun Allied Services had expanded from a regional transport business into a national logistics and infrastructure group with 4,800 employees. Business magazines called him disciplined. Investors called him reliable. Staff who had never met him called him powerful. He looked directly into the camera. "For 25 years," he said, "our people have carried this company. No machine, no building, and no balance sheet can replace human dignity. My door remains open to every voice, especially the voices that are easiest to ignore." Behind the camera, a communications officer smiled. Ronke stood near the door, holding a tablet. Bode completed the recording in one take. "Good?" he asked. "Excellent, sir," Ronke said. "Very warm, very human." He removed the lapel microphone. "Any issue from the retirees' benefit transition?" "Nothing significant. 98.7% successfully migrated. The remaining 1.3%, mostly incomplete legacy records. The administrator has sent reminders. Any medical cases at risk?" Ronke did not blink. "No verified high-risk cases, sir." Bode nodded. "Good. I do not want anybody abandoned because a paper file is old." "Of course not." His phone vibrated. A board member was waiting. A minister's office had called twice. The anniversary event team needed approval for the guest list. Bode walked out. The open door closed behind him. At 2:07 that afternoon, Sade refreshed the correspondence system. The status beside the envelope had changed. Resolved. Dupe welfare request. She stared at the screen. No scanned response letter. No receiving signature. No reviewer's comment. No proof that anybody had opened the envelope. She checked the audit trail. The change had been made through an executive administrator account at 1:52 p. Sade called the reception desk. "Good afternoon, Ma. Please. I am checking the personal envelope I delivered this morning. Has it reached Mr. Balogun?" A pause. Then the receptionist lowered her voice. "Do not call here again about that matter. The system says resolved. Then it is resolved, but there is no." The call ended. At 4:43, two archive assistants began moving disposal bags towards the industrial shred room. Sade signed off the last carton and prepared to leave. Then she saw the cream corner of an envelope through the clear side of a security bag. Her body went cold. She crossed the room. "Wait." One assistant stopped pushing the trolley. "What?" "That bag contains registered correspondence. Everything inside came from executive disposal. Who authorized it?" He showed her a printed sheet. The signature line carried a digital approval code from Ronke Williams's office. Sade pulled on gloves and broke the bag seal in front of both assistants. She logged the action, took out the envelope, and compared the tracking number. It was the same one. Still sealed, still unread. The assistant frowned. "Sister, leave this thing. You want to lose your work because of somebody's letter? If we destroy registered correspondence without review, all of us can lose our work. Now you, Sabi." Sade placed the envelope back inside an evidence sleeve and wrote an incident note. She had just finished when a voice sounded behind her. "Why is a temporary worker searching inside executive disposal?" Ronke stood at the archive entrance. No ruby suit now. She had removed the jacket and rolled her white sleeves to the elbow. That made her look more dangerous, not less. The two assistants stepped away from the trolley. Sade turned slowly. "The envelope was sent for shredding without being opened, Ma. And you decided to rescue it. It is registered personal correspondence. You opened a sealed disposal bag. I logged it in front of two witnesses because it contained a document excluded from destruction under the records policy." Ronke walked towards her. "So you have been memorizing policy now? I was employed to follow it." Ronke stopped inches away. "Give me the letter." Sade held it against her chest. Please sign the incident recovery form first. One of the assistants inhaled sharply. Ronke's face changed. Not anger alone, fear, only for a moment. Then it disappeared beneath contempt. You think this small contract has made you an auditor? You think because you can spell procedure, you can challenge the people who pay you? No, Ma. Then hand it over. Sade looked at the shred bag. She looked at the unsigned form. She looked at the old seal on the envelope. No, Ma, not without a documented transfer. Silence filled the archive. Ronke smiled. It was a thin smile. Very well. She turned towards the door. Keep it. Sade did not relax. Ronke paused without looking back. Tomorrow morning, we will see whether you still have a desk from which to protect it. Tuesday arrived with rain. By 6:50 in the morning, water had gathered along the curbs of Ozumba Mbadiwe Avenue. Cars moved slowly through the grey light. Sade reached the office with the hem of her trousers damp and the envelope sealed inside a waterproof folder beneath her blouse. She had barely sat down when her supervisor appeared. Conference room 3, he said. His voice carried no greeting. Sade followed him upstairs. Ronke was waiting with a human resources officer and a printed file placed neatly before her. On the wall, a digital clock changed from 8:04 to 8:05. Ronke did not ask Sade to sit. This meeting concerns misconduct, she said. The human resources officer adjusted her glasses. Miss Adeyemi, you are alleged to have interfered with executive correspondence, broken a sealed disposal bag, and retained a document after being instructed to surrender it. Sade placed her own notes on the table. The disposal bag contained registered correspondence that had not completed review. The records instruction excludes such items from destruction. I opened the bag in front of 2 witnesses and recorded the recovery. Ronke leaned back. You see, this is the problem. She thinks moving cartons has made her legal counsel. The human resources officer looked uncomfortable. Where is the envelope now? In secured temporary custody. Meaning? Ronke asked. Meaning I will release it to an authorized recipient who signs for it. Ronke laughed softly. Listen to this girl. An ordinary temporary worker is now setting conditions for the chief of staff. Sade kept her eyes on the human resources officer. I am not setting a personal condition. I am following the chain of custody requirement. You are becoming too bold, Ronke said. Poor people enter air conditioning and forget the sun that brought them. The words struck the room. The human resources officer lowered her eyes. Sade felt heat rise in her face, but her voice remained steady. Ma, my income does not change whether the document must be signed for. Ronke's fingers tightened around her pen. The human resources officer cleared her throat. We will issue a written warning pending review. You are instructed not to access the executive floor without prior approval. You must also return the envelope to records custody by noon. I will return it to the secure correspondence locker and document the transfer. That is acceptable, the officer said quickly. Ronke turned her head. I said she should give it to me. The warning letter says records custody, Sade replied. Ronke stared at her for 3 long seconds. Then she smiled. Sign the warning. Sade read every line. One paragraph described her conduct as potentially threatening to executive safety. She crossed it out and wrote beside it, disputed. No threat alleged or demonstrated. Ronke slammed her palm on the table. You cannot edit an official warning. I can acknowledge receipt and state my disagreement. Who taught you all this nonsense? My former records lecturer, Ma Sade, signed with the time, 8:31 a.m., and requested a copy. When she left, her knees were weak. Courage did not remove fear. It merely forced the body to move while fear was still shouting. At noon, Sade placed the envelope in locker E17. She sealed the locker with numbered tape, entered the number into the register, and asked her supervisor to countersign. He hesitated. "Sade, why are you carrying this matter on your head?" "Sir, the letter has been rejected 3 times and almost destroyed. Maybe there is a reason. Then the reason should be recorded." He glanced towards the door. "You have only 9 working days left on your contract. I know. They can decide not to renew you. I know. You have family? 1 aunt. Rent? Yes." He sighed. "My sister sometimes being correct is expensive." Sade looked at the locker. So is being silent. He did not answer. At 3:16 that afternoon, a cleaner brought Sade a folded piece of paper. "Somebody left this under the pantry kettle," the woman said. Sade opened it. The note contained 1 sentence. "If you want to understand the letter, check Benefit Transition Batch 41 and speak to Internal Audit. No name, no signature." Sade read it twice, then tore off the section containing her own name and placed the remainder in her notebook. She could not access benefit records. She had no reason to. Attempting to search them would give Ronke exactly the accusation she needed. So Sade did not touch the system. Instead, after work, she copied the return address written on the envelope from the correspondence log. Number 17, Adaranola Close, Surulere. At 5:42, she boarded a bus towards Ojuelegba. The rain had stopped, but the road still shone beneath headlights. Hawkers moved between vehicles carrying plantain chips, phone chargers, and bottles of water. By the time Sade reached Adaranola Close, evening had settled over the low houses. Number 17 was part of an old staff housing compound. The paint had faded from cream to the color of dry bone. A small sign beside the gate read Balogun Retted Staff Residents Association. Sade knocked. A woman in a pale lavender dress opened the door. She was tall despite the bend in her shoulders. A cream scarf covered her grey hair. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. "Yes, my daughter." "Good evening, Ma. Are you Mrs. Ruth Johnson?" The woman's expression changed. "Who is asking?" "My name is Sade Adeyemi. I work in records at Balogun Allied Services." Ruth gripped the doorframe. As he read it, Sade did not pretend not to understand. "No, Ma." Ruth closed her eyes. For 1 second, pain crossed her face. Not surprise. Pain that had already happened many times. "Come inside." The sitting room was clean and modest. Plastic flowers stood in a glass jar. Old staff photographs covered one wall. On a small table lay medicine packets, a blood pressure monitor, and a folder thick with photocopies. Ruth lowered herself into an armchair. "I sent that letter first on September 18th, she said. "Registered post." They returned it. "I sent another one on the 29th. No response. Then I paid a dispatch rider on Saturday. He said security accepted it. It reached the building, Ma, but not Bode." "No." Ruth looked towards the photographs. "Ronk." Sade did not confirm or deny it. She had come to understand the urgency, not to share internal accusations. "Ma, the envelope says something will happen on Friday at midnight." "What is it?" Ruth pulled the thick folder closer. 211 retired staff were moved to a new medical benefit administrator. "The company says our files are incomplete. They gave us a deadline to verify our service history." "Did people submit the documents?" "Many did. Some more than once." She opened the folder. There were courier receipts, photocopied employment cards, pension statements, and emails printed in black and white. "My own file says I worked for the company for 19 years. I worked for 31. They lost 12 years because the old canteen records were never digitized." Sade looked at one notice. It stated that unverified beneficiaries would be removed from the medical plan at 11:59 p.m. on October 10. "How many people have ongoing treatment?" she asked. 17 have procedures or specialist appointments already scheduled. Others need medicine every month. Some can manage for a few weeks. Some cannot. Have you reported this through the Retirees Association? 4 times. Did you receive reference numbers? Ruth handed her a list. Sade counted. 173 electronic references. 38 paper acknowledgements. Different names, different dates, different clinics. Total, 211. Why address the letter directly to Mr. Balogun? Sade asked. Ruth became quiet. Then she stood slowly and walked to the wall of photographs. She removed one frame. The picture had been taken in 2003. A younger Ruth stood behind a canteen counter wearing a white apron. Beside her was a thin man in an oversized shirt holding a metal food tray. Sade recognized him. Bode Balogun. He looked nothing like the man on magazine covers. His cheeks were hollow. His eyes carried the shame of somebody trying hard not to appear hungry. He was 24, Ruth said. A junior operations assistant. His father had just died. There was trouble in the family. Salary delay, debt. He worked like somebody running from fire. She touched the edge of the photograph. For 6 weeks, Bode came to the canteen and ordered only water. He would sit near the window while others ate. When I asked him, he said he was fasting. Ruth smiled without amusement. Fasting. Every day, even on Sunday duty. What did you do? I stopped asking in front of people. I kept food for him after closing, rice, beans, sometimes moi. I told him it was excess so he would not feel ashamed. Sade looked again at the young man in the picture. One night, he collapsed in the loading bay, Ruth continued. Exhaustion and an untreated infection. The company clinic asked for a deposit because his staff confirmation had not been completed. I used money from the welfare cooperative. Did he repay it? Every kobo. Slowly. Ruth returned the frame to the wall. He hated receiving help. Not because he was proud in a bad way. Because hardship had already made him feel small. I told him poverty is a condition, not an identity. I told him no human being should have to perform suffering before receiving respect. She walked to a wooden cabinet and brought out a small tin box. Inside were old receipts, staff badges, and a folded paper no larger than Sade's palm. Ruth opened it. The ink had faded, but the handwriting remained clear. Ma Ruth, if I ever have power here, nobody will have to beg before they are treated like a human being. Bode, September 14, 2003. Sade felt something tighten in her chest. That paper is inside the envelope? A photocopy. The original stays with me. Does he know about the 211 cases? I do not know what he knows. I know his signature is on the final transition approval. Ruth's voice hardened. I am not writing because he owes me for feeding him. Kindness is not a loan. I am writing because a man who once knew what it meant to be invisible has built an office where invisible people cannot reach him. Sade looked at the medicine packets. Your own treatment? Ruth pressed a hand against her chest. A cardiac procedure is scheduled for the following week. The clinic wants confirmation before Friday. But do not carry my sickness on your head. There are 16 others with urgent appointments. My name should not become more important because I knew Bode when he was poor. The sentence stayed with Sade. Ruth did not want special mercy. She wanted a fair system. Can you give me copies of the delivery receipts? Sade asked. For what? To understand whether the complaints were received and closed properly. I will not take medical details, only reference numbers and dates. Ruth studied her face. My daughter, what is your position in that company? Temporary records assistant. Ruth stared at her. You are risking your work. I am trying to follow the letter. No, you are trying to follow your conscience. Sade looked down. Ruth reached across the table and covered her hand. Conscience is good, but courage without method can destroy the person carrying it. Do not steal. Do not hack. Do not expose anybody's medical condition without consent. If they accuse you, let your hands remain clean. Sade nodded. I understand, Ma. Ruth gave her photocopies of the tracking list, the termination notice, and 3 delivery receipts. She signed a short note confirming that Sade had permission to use the reference numbers only for verification. At the door, Ruth said, If you reach Bode, do not tell him I saved his life. Why? Because that is not why he should act. Sade walked back towards the main road, under a sky heavy with another storm. She had gone to Surulere looking for the meaning of one letter. She left carrying the weight of 211 names. Wednesday morning, Sade arrived at internal audit at 8:22. The department occupied half of the 23rd floor. There were no flowers there. Just locked cabinets, grey carpet, and the quiet tension of people, paid to notice what others wanted hidden. Dare Okoro came to reception after Sade had waited 19 minutes. He was 36, slim and careful, with a charcoal suit and tired eyes. You asked to see me about a records matter? Yes, sir. Benefit Transition Batch 41. His face did not change, but his hand stopped moving. Who told you that number? I found related correspondence. Do you have authorized access to benefit data? No, sir. I have not attempted to access it. Good. Keep it that way. He began to turn. Sade took out the list of reference numbers. I only need to know whether these complaints exist. Dare glanced at the first page. His jaw tightened. The Retirees Association. With written permission, you should take it to Human Resources. They closed the envelope without opening it. That is not an audit matter. It becomes an audit matter if the system shows complaints resolved without evidence of review. Dare looked towards the reception desk. Come. He led her into a small meeting room and shut the door. Miss Adeyemi, you are a contract worker. Why are you involving yourself in this? Because a registered letter was almost shredded. Letters are misrouted every day. 3 times? He did not answer. Sade placed the termination notice on the table. The deadline is Friday. 211 people may lose medical cover. Dare lowered his voice. You cannot prove that from reference numbers. No, but you can check whether the references were received. Dare sat down. For weeks he had been carrying a secret that had begun as a small discrepancy. The benefit administrator reported a 98.7% successful migration. Yet batch 41 contained far more exceptions than the summary allowed. When Dare requested source documents, Ronke's office replied that the cases were duplicates, deceased beneficiaries, or incomplete submissions. He had sampled 23 files. 14 had documents attached. 9 had been closed within the same minute. He drafted an exception report. Then Ronke invited him to her office. She did not threaten him openly. People like Ronke rarely did. She spoke about the company's refinancing. She spoke about jobs that could be lost if investors became nervous. She reminded him that internal audit existed to protect the organization, not embarrass it over legacy noise. Then she mentioned that his promotion to audit manager required executive support. Dare changed the report status from urgent to pending verification. He told himself it was temporary. 3 weeks passed. Now a temporary records worker sat before him with the exact reference list he had avoided. Have you seen batch 41? Sade asked. Dare looked at the closed door. I cannot discuss confidential audit work. Then do not discuss it. Just tell me where to submit a protected concern. The whistleblowing portal. Who receives the portal reports? Compliance and the Chief of Staff's office. So Ronke receives complaints about correspondence controlled by Ronke. Dare rubbed his forehead. There is an external hotline. The link on the staff page expired in August. He looked at her sharply. You checked. I tried to read the policy after receiving my warning. Dare leaned back. For the first time, shame entered his eyes. You should go back to records, he said. Keep your copies. Do not access any restricted system. Do not send the list through company email. Are the complaints real? I did not say that. You did not need to. Sade stood. At the door, Dare spoke again. Miss Adeyemi, she turned. If somebody asks whether I confirmed anything, the answer is no. Did you? He held her gaze. No, it was the truth in the narrowest possible sense. It was also cowardice. At 10:47, Ronker received an automated security notice that Sade's staff badge had entered the internal audit floor. She called Dare immediately. Why was the contract worker from records in your department? Dare looked through the glass wall at his team. She asked about the whistleblowing procedure. Regarding? She did not disclose details. Do not play games with me, Dare. I am answering your question. Ronker's voice softened. That was worse. You remember the executive review next month? Yes. I would hate for the board to conclude that you cannot manage sensitive staff. Dare said nothing. Send me a note confirming she received no confidential information. She did not. Good. And Dare? Yes? Batch 41 is closed. The line went dead. By noon, Ronke had made her decision. Sade would not merely be warned. She would be discredited. A warning could create sympathy. A theft allegation would create distance. And once people believed Sade had stolen medical data, anything she said about the letter would sound like revenge. At 2:18 on Wednesday afternoon, a junior technology officer entered the basement archive carrying a laptop. We need to update the scanner driver, he told Sade's supervisor. The supervisor waved him towards the shared workstation. Sade was on the 21st floor at that time, collecting signed disposal schedules from legal. Her staff badge recorded her entry at 2:11 and her exit at 2:39. Nobody in records paid attention when the technology officer connected an external drive to the shared workstation. At 2:27, a folder containing names, identification numbers, and benefit claim references was copied from a restricted network location. The activity log attached the download to Sade's username. Her account had remained active because she had locked, not signed out, before leaving the basement. At 30:06, security officers arrived. Yusuf Bello came with them. He was 52, broad-chested and normally courteous. He had worked for the company for 14 years and believed in order with the seriousness of a military man. That afternoon his face was closed. Miss Adeyemi, step away from the computer. Sade looked up from a carton list. Hope no problem, sir. Your workstation has been used to download confidential medical benefit data. For a moment, she thought she had heard wrongly. I have no access to medical benefit data. Do not touch anything. I was not here when. Step away. The room fell silent. Her colleagues stared. One woman slowly moved her handbag farther from Sade's chair. Yusuf asked for Sade's staff badge and work phone. She handed them over. Sir, please check the badge log. I was upstairs. That will be reviewed. My account was locked. That will be reviewed. Who reported this? That will be reviewed. Every answer sounded like a door closing. Ronke appeared at the entrance 2 minutes later. She looked shocked. Perfectly shocked. What happened? She asked. Yusuf explained. Ronke turned to Sade with cold disappointment. So this is why you were fighting to keep that envelope. You wanted access to the people behind it. No, Ma. You visited internal audit this morning. Now confidential records are on your workstation. What exactly are you planning? I did not download anything. Ronke looked around at the archive staff. Everybody says that after they are caught, Sade's throat tightened. Check the camera. Check my badge. Ask legal where I was. Ronke folded her arms. You are not in a position to give instructions. Sade looked at Yusuf. Sir, the envelope in locker E17 is registered personal correspondence. Please preserve it. Do not release it without a signed movement record. Ronke let out a bitter laugh. Even now, she is giving orders. Yusuf frowned. Is the envelope connected to this investigation? It may contain material obtained unlawfully, Ronke said. That is not true, Sade replied. It was sealed when I found it. It is still sealed. Enough. Ronke moved closer. You arrived here with one faded blouse and a borrowed handbag. We gave you a desk. We gave you access. Instead of being grateful, you started digging through matters bigger than your entire family. The insult landed harder because it was public. Sade felt every pair of eyes on her clothes. On the worn shoulder of the orange blouse, on the cheap shoes she had polished that morning, on the handbag whose zip no longer closed properly. She raised her chin. You gave me work, Ma. You did not give me my dignity. A chair scraped against the floor. Ronke's nostrils flared. Yusuf stepped between them. Miss Adeyemi, you are suspended pending investigation. You will leave the premises now. Will I receive the allegation in writing? Yes, and a copy of the access log. That is part of the investigation. Please note that I dispute the allegation. Yusuf's expression softened for the first time. It will be noted. Sade picked up her handbag. Ronke pointed at it. Search it. Yusuf hesitated. Ma, we have no indication that she is carrying company property. She retained correspondence yesterday. It is in the locker, Sade said. Ronke's eyes narrowed. Search her bag. Yusuf looked at Sade. Please place it on the table and open it yourself. Sade did. Inside were a purse, a small Bible, 2 pens, a sanitary pouch, a bottle of water, and the medicine she had bought for her aunt. Nothing else. The search humiliated her anyway. That was the point. When Sade reached the lobby, her access badge had already been disabled. The turnstile flashed red. A receptionist who used to greet her looked away. Outside, the sun struck her face. Lagos traffic moved as if nothing had happened. By 4:02, an email reached her private address. Suspension without access to premises. Salary hold pending recovery of potential losses. Investigation into unauthorized acquisition of sensitive personal information. Her hands began to shake. She sat on a concrete barrier beside the road and read the email again. The accusation was not only about losing one contract. Data theft could follow her for years. Employers could refuse her. Recruiters could blacklist her. A temporary worker did not have a legal department, savings, or influential friends. She had rent due in 9 days and 8,600 naira in her bank account. Her phone rang. It was the recruitment agency that had placed her at Balogun Allied Services. Sad. What happened? I have been accused of downloading data. I did not do it. The client has requested that we suspend your placement. Can you help me obtain the system log? We cannot interfere with the client's investigation. My salary. They have placed it on hold. I worked those days. We are checking. How long? I cannot say. The call ended with the promise that somebody would get back to her. Nobody did. Sade took a bus to Jibowu. She stood for most of the journey because every seat was filled. Rain began again before she reached home. Her aunt was waiting under the veranda. You are early, the older woman said. Sade forced a smile. There was an office issue. What kind of issue? They asked me to stay home while they investigate something. Her aunt studied her face. Did you steal? No. Then do not bend your neck. Sade almost cried. Instead, she went into the small room they shared and removed her wet blouse. The shoulder seam had not torn yet. That would happen 2 days later on the marble floor of Crown Meridian. For now, it was only faded, only tired, like her. That evening, Ronke entered locker E17 with Yusuf present. The numbered tape was intact. Yusuf logged the opening. Inside was the cream envelope. Ronke reached for it. Yusuf held out the movement register. "Please sign, Ma." Ronke looked at him. "For what?" "Transfer into investigation custody." Her mouth tightened. "You have worked here for 14 years, Yusuf. Do you suddenly need lessons from a suspended contract worker? I need the record to be complete." Ronke signed. Yusuf placed the envelope in an evidence bag. "Where should it be stored?" "My office. Security evidence room is more appropriate. This is executive correspondence, not a weapon. It is connected to the allegation." Ronke's eyes sharpened. "Keep it until Friday morning, then bring it to me." Yusuf nodded, but unease had entered him. The suspension order described Sade as a potential reputational disruption. It did not describe a physical threat. Yet Ronke had instructed security to circulate Sade's photograph to the anniversary event team and bar her from all company functions. Yusuf had asked why. Ronke said Sade might create a scene. Now he held the letter that Sade had protected even while being accused. He wondered what could be inside. He did not open it. But for the first time, he wondered whether obedience could become carelessness. Thursday morning brought another blow. At 9:17, Sade received a message from her landlord. Rent balance must be cleared by October 15. No more stories. At 10:03, a recruiter called about a permanent records position at a private hospital. "We received a reference concern from your current placement," the recruiter said. "Can you explain an ongoing data investigation?" Sade sat upright. "The allegation is false. I have not been given the evidence or a hearing. Unfortunately, the hospital cannot proceed while the matter is unresolved. Can you keep my application open? We will note it." The polite words meant no. At 11:40, an email arrived from Ronke's office. It offered Sade a path to administrative resolution. She would receive her held salary. The agency would issue a neutral reference. The company would not pursue further action. In return, she had to sign a statement saying that she had misunderstood the benefit correspondence, removed documents outside procedure, and accepted that no evidence of deliberate suppression existed. The attachment also included a confidentiality undertaking. Sade read it in the small cybercafe near her house because her phone screen was cracked and difficult to use. The owner printed the documents for 80 naira per page. 7 pages, 560 naira she could not spare. She carried them to a plastic table outside and read every line. If she signed, she could pay rent. She could preserve her reference. She could say she had tried. Ruth would never know what happened inside the office. The 2 under 11 retirees might lose coverage, but Say had not created the system. She was not an executive. She was not an auditor. She was not even permanent staff. Why should one poor woman be expected to fight a company with 4,800 employees? Her phone rang. Ruth. "My daughter, I heard they suspended you." Sade closed her eyes. "Who told you?" "A former staff member still has a sister in accounts. News moves faster than official letters. It is under investigation, Ma. Stop." Sade opened her eyes. Ruth's voice was firm. "Do not lose your future because of me. Return anything you have. Sign what they want. I am 64. I have lived. This is not only about you, I know. But I will not allow them to bury a young woman under my medical file. They are already trying. Then move away before the soil covers you." Sade looked at the 7-page agreement. "Ma, did you ever regret helping Bode when he was young?" "No, even when it cost money." "Yes, it cost money. Even when nobody rewarded you. Kindness that waits for reward is business." Sade ran a finger over the signature line. What if doing the right thing destroys the person doing it? Ruth was silent for a while. Then she said, "Doing right does not mean throwing yourself under a moving lorry. Use evidence, use witnesses, use lawful channels. If there is no safe channel, build a record showing you tried. But do not become like the people you are fighting." Sade folded the agreement. "I understand. Promise me you will not carry my body to that company and beg." "I promise, and do not open my letter." "I will not." After the call, Sade wrote a reply. "I reject the proposed statement because it contains admissions that are not true. I request preservation of access logs, badge records, corridor camera footage and workstation device history between 2 p.m. and 2:45 p.m. on October 8. I also request an independent reviewer because the Chief of Staff's office is connected to the correspondence in dispute." She sent it at 12:26. At 12:31, Ronke read the message. At 12:34, she called technology. "Prepare the shared workstation for routine reimaging," she said. The officer on the line hesitated. "There is an active investigation." "Exactly. Preserve what policy requires, then reset the machine." "What about device-level external drive logs?" Ronke's voice became cold. "Are you asking me how to do your job?" "No, Ma. Complete it before close of business." At 1:02, Dare received an automatic notification that the workstation associated with a sensitive data incident had been scheduled for reimaging. He stared at the notice. Then he opened the audit case he had marked pending 3 weeks earlier. Batch 41. He compared Sade's badge movement to the download timestamp. At 2:27 on Wednesday, Sade's badge was inside legal on the 21st floor. The shared workstation had no biometric login. Her username had been active, but the external drive carried a registered device identifier. Dare searched the technology asset register. The drive had been issued to a junior officer assigned to executive support. He checked the corridor camera index. The camera footage had not yet been deleted. It showed the officer entering records at 2:18 and leaving at 2:33. Dare's stomach turned. This was no longer a weak procedure. It was a frame-up. He copied the logs into the protected audit repository and triggered a legal hold that only the audit committee chair could remove. Then he sat back and covered his face. He had known something was wrong. He had delayed. Now, a woman with less power than everybody involved was paying the price. At 2:44, Ronke called him. "Did you place a hold on the records workstation?" "Yes. Remove it." "I cannot. The incident involves potential evidence manipulation." A long silence followed. "Choose your words carefully, Dare." "I am choosing them carefully. You want to destroy a refinancing over one noisy contract worker. This is not about her noise. Then what is it about?" "The log." Ronke's breathing changed. "What log?" Dare knew she was testing him. "The one you do not want preserved." Ronke ended the call. Dare looked at the dark phone screen. His promotion was gone. Perhaps his job too. But a strange thing happened beneath the fear. He could breathe again. That evening, Sade returned to Ruth's house with blank consent forms she had drafted at the cybercaf. The forms authorized the Retirees Association to provide claim reference numbers, submission dates, and outcome notices for review. They specifically excluded diagnoses, medication lists, and unrelated personal data. Ruth read the first page. "You did this?" "Yes, Ma. It is not a legal document. It is only a clear permission record. You paid to print all these?" 70 copies. We can photocopy more after people sign." "How much?" "It is fine. How much?" 4,200 naira. Ruth stared at her. "You have salary?" "It is on hold. And you spent this money?" "We need consent if the references are going to be presented." Ruth's eyes filled, but she did not cry. She called 3 members of the Retirees Association. By 6:30, 11 people had gathered in the sitting room. Some came with plastic bags of documents. One man carried a folder tied with shoelace. A woman brought 4 rejection emails printed at a business center. Sade explained the rules. No medical details unless necessary. Do not give me original identity cards. Keep your originals. We are recording only what was submitted, when it was submitted, and how the company responded. An elderly man shook his head. My daughter, will this bring back the cover? I cannot promise that. Then why are we doing it? Because without a clear record, they can say nobody complained. Ruth nodded. Let us make it impossible for them to say that. For 3 hours they worked. Sade numbered each consent form. She built a handwritten table. Reference number, date submitted, method, response, urgency, proof available. She did not photograph private medical reports. She did not collect national identity numbers. She did not carry documents she did not need. Method mattered. By 9:41, they had verified 63 cases. 148 remained. The deadline was 26 hours away. Sade looked at the pages spread across Ruth's table. Somewhere inside Balogun Allied Services, powerful people had reduced these lives to a percentage. Here, each percentage had a face, a voice, a person waiting for somebody to listen. Friday began before sunrise. At 4:58 a.m., Sade was still awake in Ruth's sitting room. Empty cups stood beside stacks of paper. The ceiling fan turned slowly, pushing warm air from one side of the room to the other. More retirees had arrived through the night. Some came in person. Some sent authorized copies through relatives. Others dictated reference numbers over the phone while association officers checked them against receipts. By 5:26, 179 cases had been verified. At 6:03, the number reached 204. 7 remained. Ruth sat beside the window, one hand pressed against her chest. Sade noticed, Ma, you need to rest. I am managing. You have said that 4 times, and I am still managing. Ruth tried to smile, but sweat had appeared along her hairline. Sade knelt beside her. Where is the pain? It is not pain, just pressure. That is not something to manage with mouth. Ruth waved her away. Finish the list. Sade stood. No, everybody in the room looked at her. Ruth frowned. My daughter? No, Ma. We cannot fight a company for ignoring health and then ignore yours in front of us. The sentence ended the argument. At 6:21, a neighbor drove them to a private clinic in Yaba. Ruth carried no suitcase. She insisted on walking from the car, but halfway to the entrance, she stopped and held the wall. A nurse brought a wheelchair. Ruth protested. Sade ignored her. After initial checks, the doctor explained that Ruth's condition required observation and further tests. The scheduled cardiac procedure had not yet been authorized. Stress and missed medication had increased the risk, but there was no dramatic declaration that she would die by sunset. Reality was frightening enough. We need confirmation of coverage today, the doctor said. If not, the clinic will discuss a deposit arrangement. But she should remain here for now. How much is the deposit? Sade asked. 1,850,000 naira for the procedure pathway. Today's observation is separate. Sade nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, because the amount stood so far beyond her reality that the mind had nowhere sensible to place it. Ruth reached for her hand. Do not start borrowing because of me. I am not borrowing. Your face has already entered loan calculation. Sade looked away. The remaining 7 records were verified by 8:12. 2 association officers brought the final signed forms to the clinic. Sade arranged the pages in numerical order. 211, not one duplicate. Not one dead beneficiary. All had evidence of submission. At 8:37, she emailed a summary to the company's external board secretariat address, the audit committee mailbox, and the benefit administrator's complaint channel. She attached no diagnoses, only consent records, reference numbers, dates, and a request for immediate preservation. The email subject read, "Urgent. 211 Rebenefit Cassis, at risk of automatic termination tonight." She copied herself and Ruth's association. Then she printed the delivery confirmation. A record. Always a record. At Balogun Allied Services, Dare had spent most of the night in the protected audit repository. The truth was worse than he first believed. Of the 211 cases, 173 electronic complaints had been moved into a dormant folder using an administrator credential controlled by executive support. 38 paper complaints had been logged at the mailroom, then marked previously resolved, without supporting response letters. 64 files showed deliberate status changes after complete documents were received. The remaining 147 revealed something less cinematic but equally cruel. Bad process, missing legacy data, weak review, and a culture in which nobody wanted to question a favorable report. Not every harm came from a mastermind. Some harm came from laziness, some from fear, some from incentives, some from people saying, "It is not my department." Dare prepared a 14-page exception summary. He removed personal medical details and used anonymized case codes. He attached system timestamps, device identifiers, badge records, and the legal hold confirmation. At 7:45, he sent it directly to the audit committee chair. At 7:46, he received an out-of-office reply. The chair was traveling and would land in Abuja at 3:10 p.m. Dare swore under his breath. He called the board secretariat. No answer. He called again at 8:03. A secretary picked up. "This is urgent," Dare said. "There may be active suppression of benefit complaints and manipulation of an investigation. Send an email." "I have sent it, then it will be reviewed. The automatic termination is tonight. I will flag it." Dare had heard those words before. Flag it, escalate it, review it. Words that sounded like action while time continued moving. At 8:20, Ronke entered Bode's office, carrying the final benefit transition approval. Bode stood beside the window, reading the speech for that evening's anniversary gala. His cobalt blue suit hung from a stand nearby. "Morning," he said. "Good morning, sir. You look as if you have not slept." Event week. She placed the folder on his desk. "This is the final confirmation for the legacy benefit migration. The administrator needs your signature before noon so the old platform can close at midnight." Bode opened the summary. 98.7% migration completed. 1.3% ineligible, unverified, or duplicate. Projected annual savings 86.4 million naira. He turned a page. No unresolved high-risk cases, none verified. Any appeal window, 90 days after termination for those who later provide documents. Bode frowned. If their cover ends first, what happens during the appeal? They may seek reimbursement once eligibility is confirmed. That can take months. It is standard transition language. He looked at her. "I asked what happens to the person." Ronka paused. "The administrator has a hardship desk. Put that in writing. It is already in the service schedule." Bode flipped through the file. He had a board breakfast in 12 minutes, a port concession call after that. Then a rehearsal, 3 interviews, and the anniversary gala. The report carried approvals from Human Resources, Finance and Legal. He signed. The 10 October 2025, 8:27 a.m. 1 signature, blue ink. 211 lives moved closer to midnight. Ronke closed the folder. "Thank you, sir." Send me the first 30-day appeal report personally. Of course. As she reached the door, Bode spoke again. Ronk? Yes, sir. You are certain there are no urgent cases? Her answer came smoothly. Yes. Bode nodded and returned to his speech. The first line read, Leadership is the responsibility to hear what power makes easy to miss. At 9:11, Ronki called Yusuf. Bring the envelope to my office. Yusuf arrived with the evidence bag and movement register. Ronke signed for it. Anything else? She asked. Security received the event exclusion list. Miss Adeyemi is marked as reputational disruption. Yes. What physical threat has she made? Ronke looked up slowly. Are you questioning an executive security instruction? I am documenting the basis. She stole confidential data and may interrupt a live event. The investigation is incomplete. That is why she is suspended, not convicted. Then should the wording be unauthorized attendee rather than security threat? Ronke rose from her chair. Yusuf, you are a security officer. Your work is to prevent disruption. It is not to debate language with me. He remained still. Understood, Ma. Good. She placed the evidence bag in her handbag. If she appears at Crown Meridian, remove her immediately. Using what level of force? Whatever is necessary. Yusuf's jaw tightened. Necessary for what? Ronke stared at him. To protect the company. He left her office with a heaviness in his chest. A company was a legal entity. A building. Accounts. Contracts. A brand. Sade was a person. Yet everybody kept speaking as if the company could feel pain while she could not. At 10:06, Ronke called Sade. Sade was in the clinic corridor. I received your email, Ronke said. Good. You have distributed confidential reference numbers outside authorized channels. They were provided with written consent by the people concerned. You are not a lawyer. No. You are not an auditor. No, you are not even an employee anymore. My suspension letter says pending investigation. Ronke's voice dropped. Do you enjoy suffering? Sade looked through the glass panel at Ruth, sleeping beneath a thin blanket. No, Ma. Then stop creating it for yourself. Sign the resolution agreement by noon. Your salary will be released today. Refuse, and the company will pursue the data complaint fully. Will Mr. Balogun receive Ruth's letter? That matter is closed. Has he read it? That is none of your concern. It became my concern when you tried to shred it. Ronke went silent. Sade continued. I have not opened the letter. I have not stolen medical data. I have used consent. I have preserved every email. Whatever you do next, Ma, let it also be on record. Ronke laughed once. You think records will save you? Records belong to those who control the system. No, records belong to what happened. Ronke ended the call. At 10:19, she instructed the recruitment agency to issue an adverse reference alert to clients considering Say for placement. At 10:42, the agency complied. At 11:08, Dare received Sade's email through the audit committee mailbox. He opened the consent summary and compared it to the internal exception list. Every reference matched. He called her. You did not attach diagnoses. No, you have written consent for all 211. Yes. Where are the originals? With the Retirees Association. I have copies. Good. Sade leaned against the clinic wall. Sir, did my account download the medical file? Dare closed his eyes. No. The answer came quietly, but it changed the air around her. Can you prove it? Yes. Then why am I still suspended? Because I have not yet completed the protected escalation. The termination is tonight. I know. Mr. Balogun has an anniversary event this evening, I know. Will he be told before then? Dare looked at the 14-page report on his desk. I am trying. Sade's voice hardened. Sir, that is what everybody says while the clock is moving. The words cut because they were true. Dare stood. I will be at the event. Internal audit has a table. Can you bring the report? I can bring an authorized summary and preserve the full evidence. Will you speak? He did not answer immediately. Will you? Sade asked again. Yes, this time he meant it. At 12:15, the clinic administrator came to Ruth's room. We still do not have confirmation from the benefit administrator, she said. We can continue observation today, but the procedure booking may be released if authorization does not come by close of business. Ruth nodded as if discussing somebody else. After the administrator left, Sade sat beside her. I am going to the anniversary event. Ruth's eyes opened. No, the board, auditors, and Mr. Balogun will be there. You are barred. I was assigned to event registration before suspension. My name is still on the staff invitation list. They will remove you. I have the external submission receipt, the consent summary, and the email showing I requested an independent review. They may arrest you. I will remain in the public event area. I will not enter restricted rooms. I will not force past security. Ruth struggled upright. Sade, hear me. Do not carry my body there like evidence. Do not wheel me into that hall so people can pity me. I promised. Carry the letter, not me. Sade looked down. Ronke has the letter. Ruth's face fell. Then what will you carry? The truth around it. Ruth reached into the drawer beside her bed and removed the original folded note from 2003. Sade shook her head. No, Ma. Keep it. If the copy has disappeared, he must see the handwriting. I cannot be responsible for losing this. You are already responsible for nothing, yet you are carrying everybody. Ruth pressed the note into her hand. Put it in your purse. Give it only to Bode. Sade hesitated. Why trust me? Ruth looked at her with tired eyes. Because you had the chance to open my letter, and you did not. At 2:03, Sade went home to change. She owned no gala dress, no expensive shoes, no jewelry beyond small silver earrings. She washed her face, retied her hair, and put on the burnt orange blouse she had worn to work on Monday. The fabric was faded at the shoulder but clean. She paired it with black trousers and the pale blue scarf Ruth had admired. Her aunt watched from the doorway. You are going back to those people? Yes. They may disgrace you. I know. Then why? Sade slipped the original note into the inner pocket of her handbag. Because, if I stay here, they will still disgrace me. They will only do it where nobody can see. Her aunt stepped forward and straightened the blouse collar. Do not insult anybody. I will not. Do not fight. I will not. Do not kneel and beg. Sade's eyes burned. I will not. Her aunt touched her cheek. Then go with your full height. At 3:10, the audit committee chair landed in Abuja and switched on her phone. Dare's email was the first marked urgent. She opened the executive summary in the airport car. At 3:18, she called the board secretary. Do not allow the benefit platform to close tonight, she said. The CEO signed the transition approval this morning. Then reach him. He is in event rehearsal. Reach him. At 3:23, the board secretary called Ronke. Ronke looked at the name flashing on her screen and did not answer. At 3:28, a second call came. She silenced it. At 3:31, she sent a message to Bode's aide. No calls during rehearsal unless security emergency. At 3:36, she removed the cream envelope from her handbag. For the first time, she tore it open. She read Ruth's 4 pages. She saw the photocopy of Bode's promise. She saw the list codes. She saw the old meal card bearing his name. Ronke's hands became cold. The letter was not wild emotion. It was precise. Dates, references, a request for a 90-day pause. A warning that the appeals channel reported to the same office blocking the complaints. And a final paragraph that would destroy Bode's faith in her. Ronke took the pages to the executive preparation room at Crown Meridian. She fed the list of codes into a portable shredder. Then the photocopy. Then 3 pages of the letter. The machine chewed slowly. When she reached the first page, footsteps sounded outside. Ronke stopped. She folded the remaining page and pushed it back into the torn envelope with the old meal card. There was no time to finish. She placed the envelope inside her handbag. The final page of Ruth's letter, the original address page and the meal card survived. So did the faded blue seal. At 5:47, Sade arrived at Crown Meridian. The hotel glowed beneath chandeliers. Black vehicles lined the entrance. Camera crews adjusted lights near a gold anniversary backdrop. Guests in silk, lace, and tailored suits moved across the lobby holding invitation cards. Sade joined the staff entry queue. At the desk, a young event assistant scanned her printed invitation. The system displayed her name. Sade Adeyemi, registration support. Then a red banner appeared. Access restricted. Contact attacket. The assistant's eyes moved from the screen to Sade's faded blouse. Please step aside. I am on the invitation list. Your access is restricted. I only need to submit an urgent board communication. Step aside, Yusuf approached. He recognized her immediately. Miss Adeyemi, sir. You were instructed not to attend company premises or functions. The suspension letter says company premises. This is a public hotel event, and my staff invitation has not been withdrawn in writing. You are restricted in the system. I have documents for the audit committee. Give them to me. Sade looked at him. Will you sign for them? The question hit him like a stone thrown from Monday. Yusuf glanced around. Guests were watching. He lowered his voice. I will sign. Sade removed a sealed brown folder containing copies of the consent summary and submission receipt. Yusuf signed her copy at 5:56. Thank you, she said. Please deliver it directly to Mr. Dare Okoro, or the audit committee representative. I will. And Ruth Johnson's personal letter. His face changed. It was transferred to the chief of staff this morning. Sade's heart sank. Did she sign? Yes. Then it is on record. Yusuf nodded. You cannot enter the ballroom. I understand. Sade moved to the public lobby seating area. She did not fight. She did not force her way in. She sat where she could see the ballroom doors. At 6:24, Yusuf entered the ballroom, searching for Dare. Ronke intercepted him near the stage. What is that folder? Board communication from Miss Adeyemi. Give it to me. She requested direct delivery to internal audit or the audit committee. Ronke smiled without warmth. You are testing my patience today. It is sealed and signed into my custody. Yusuf, do not carry that woman on your head. She is a suspended contractor facing a data allegation. She has consent forms and an external submission receipt. How do you know? She described the contents when I signed. Ronke took one step closer. You will hand me that folder, or I will have you removed from this assignment. Yusuf looked towards the ballroom entrance. Dare was walking in. He made his choice. Mr. Okoro, Yusuf called. Dare turned. Yusuf crossed the floor and placed the sealed folder in his hands. Direct submission for internal audit. Ronke's face went still. Dare signed the receipt. Thank you. Yusuf felt the floor tilt beneath his career, but the record was complete. At 6:41, Ronke sent a message to event security. Remove Sade Adeyemi from the hotel. She is harassing guests and attempting unauthorized entry. Sade had spoken to nobody. She was sitting alone. At 6:46, 2 guards approached her. Madam, you need to leave. On what basis? You are disrupting the event. I am seated. Please cooperate. Sade stood. She could leave. Dare had the summary. The board secretary had the email. Perhaps that was enough. Then the ballroom screens began showing Bode's recorded message from Monday. My door remains open to every voice. especially the voices that are easiest to ignore. The words floated into the lobby through the open doors. Sade looked at the guards. Inside the ballroom, applause rose. The irony was too complete. "Please," she said, "allow me to speak to Mr. Okoro before I leave." "No, 1 minute." No, they moved to take her arms. Sade stepped back. The ballroom doors opened wider as waiters carried in trays. Beyond them, she saw Bode Balogun in cobalt blue walking towards the stage. Ronka stood near him in ruby red. The cream envelope was visible inside her open handbag. Sade saw the faded blue seal and understood. The letter had never reached him. Not on Monday, not on Tuesday, not even now. She pulled away from the guards and moved towards the ballroom entrance. "Sst," she shouted. Music swallowed her voice. The guards caught her arms. Guests turned. Ronke saw her. Their eyes met across the hall. Ronka lifted one hand. "Remove her." The anniversary host raised the Human-Centered Leadership Award beneath the lights. Bode reached for it, and Sade realized this was the final moment before applause buried the truth again. The 25th anniversary of Balogun Allied Services was streaming live to thousands across Nigeria. On stage, Bode Balogun stood beneath white light, one hand reaching for the Human-Centered Leadership Award. Then a woman screamed, "Sir!" The sound came from the center aisle. 2 security officers had seized Sade Adeyemi. One locked her right arm. The other caught her left as she struggled to remain standing. Her handbag struck the floor. The seam of her faded burnt orange blouse tore at the shoulder. Guests rose from their chairs. A camera turned. The live stream director hesitated, unsure whether to cut away. Ronke did not hesitate. "Remove her," she said sharply. She was suspended for stealing confidential records. The accusation moved through the hall in whispers. Data thief, suspended worker, troublemaker. Sade twisted towards the stage. "I did not steal anything." One guard pulled harder. Her knee hit the cold marble floor. Pain shot up her leg. Her handbag opened. The original note Ruth had given her remained hidden in the inner pocket. But a cream envelope slid from Ronke's own handbag when she stepped forward to block the aisle. It fell. It skidded across the polished floor. The faded blue seal faced upward. Ronke stopped it beneath one ruby-red heel. Sade saw it. So did Bode. Ronke pointed at Sade. "This woman has been harassing staff all week. She came here to demand money and destroy the company's celebration." Sade's face burned. Her knee throbbed. People in evening clothes stared down at her as if suffering had entered the wrong room. She was not begging for her job. She was not begging for money. She raised her head and shouted with the last clean breath in her body, "Sir, rid it before it is too late." Bode's hand stopped above the award. "By midnight, your signature will strip 211 retired workers of their medical cover." The hall fell into a silence so complete that the small feedback hum from the microphone sounded like an alarm. Bode looked at Sade, then at the envelope beneath Ronke's shoe, his eyes fixed on the faded blue seal. For 1 second, he was no longer standing inside Crown Meridian. He was 24 again, hungry, ashamed, sitting near a canteen window with a cup of water while other workers ate. He saw Ruth's white apron. He heard her voice. "My son, poverty is a condition. It is not your name." The color drained from his face. "Leave her," he said. The guards looked at Ronke. Bode's voice became harder. "I said leave her." They released Sade. She steadied herself with one hand on the floor. Bode stepped down from the stage. Ronke moved quickly. "Sir, this is a security matter. She is under investigation for theft." Bode stopped before her. "Lift your foot, sir, lift it." Ronke moved her shoe. Bode bent and picked up the envelope. It had already been torn open. His eyes went to Ronke. "Who opened this?" "It was transferred for investigation." That was not my question. Ronke's mouth opened. No answer came. Bode removed the remaining page and the old meal card. The card was cracked at the edges. His younger photograph stared back at him beneath faded plastic. Balogun Transportstevafus, Junior Operations Assistant, Bode Balogun. His fingers began to tremble. He unfolded the page. The handwriting was Ruth's. Bode, by midnight tonight, the company you promised to protect will erase the medical protection of 211 people. I am one of them, but I am not writing for myself. 17 former staff members have treatment already scheduled. We submitted our records. The same office that receives our complaints is closing them without review. He stopped. The page ended halfway through a sentence. The remaining pages were gone. Where is the rest? He asked. Ronke swallowed. That was all that came with it. No. Bode turned the envelope over. The torn edge was fresh. Paper dust clung to the adhesive. No, he said again. Ruth Johnson never wrote half a letter. The name passed through the room without meaning to most people. To Bode, it carried 22 years. He looked at Sade. Who are you? Sade Adeyemi, sir, temporary records assistant. How did you get this letter? I found it sealed in an executive archive drawer on Monday. It had been rejected 3 times. I delivered it to Mrs. Williams. Later, it was marked resolved without being opened and sent for shredding. That is a lie, Ronke snapped. Sade did not look at her. I recovered it from a disposal bag in front of 2 witnesses. It was placed in secure locker E17. Security transferred it to Mrs. Williams this morning. She signed for it. Bode turned towards Yusuf. The security chief stood near the aisle, his face heavy. Is that true? Bode asked. Yusuf stepped forward. Yes, sir. The envelope was intact when I transferred it at 9:16 this morning. Mrs. Williams signed the movement register. Bode looked down at the torn envelope. A woman in the front row lowered her phone. Nobody clapped now. Ronke regained her voice. Sir, even if the letter was mishandled, this woman is still accused of downloading confidential medical data. We cannot allow emotional manipulation to replace process. Bode's eyes moved to Sade. Did you download medical data? No, sir. Can you prove that? Before Sade could answer, Dare Okoro walked into the aisle carrying the sealed brown folder. Yes, he said. Internal audit can. Ronke's head turned sharply. Dare, this is neither the place nor the authorized forum. Dare stopped beside Sade. For 4 weeks I told myself there would be a better forum. There was not. He faced Bode. Sir, I need to make a protected disclosure. I also need to admit that I delayed it. Bode looked towards the live stream camera. Cut the entertainment feed, he ordered. The camera operator reached for the controls. Bode continued. Do not delete the recording. Preserve it. The event director nodded. The public stream switched to an anniversary holding screen, but the ballroom screens remained active. Bode pointed to the stage. Bring the audit summary. Ronke stepped between them. Sir, confidential allegations cannot be presented in a ballroom full of guests. Then we will present no personal medical information. Only process, numbers, and evidence custody. This will destroy confidence. Bode looked at her. Confidence in what? She had no answer. Dare connected his encrypted presentation device to the stage system. He entered a password. A plain slide appeared. Benefit Transition Batch 41. Preliminary Control Exceptions. No names will be displayed, Dare said. No diagnoses. No identity numbers. He changed the slide. 173 electronic complaints received. 38 paper complaints received. Total 211. Status in executive summary. Duplicate, incomplete, or previously resolved. Evidence of individual resolution letters. 0. A murmur moved through the hall. Bode stared at the numbers. The report I signed says 1.3% unverified, he said. Dare nodded. The percentage is technically derived from the full retiree population. It hides the effect on the exception group. Every one of these 211 cases was scheduled for termination at 11:59 tonight. Were documents submitted? In 64 sampled cases, complete documents were already attached before status closure. For the remaining cases, process defects prevented reliable review. A consent-based external summary delivered today confirms all 211 claimants have evidence of submission. Sade opened her mouth. Dare lifted the brown folder. This is the summary Miss Adeyemi submitted. Security delivered it to me under signature. Bode looked at Sade. You collected medical records? No, sir. Only reference numbers, dates, response notices, and consent. Originals remain with the Retirees Association. Why? Because people should not have to surrender private details to prove that nobody answered them. Bode's face tightened. Dare changed the slide again. A timeline appeared. 2:11 p.m. Sade badge entry, legal floor. 2:18 p.m. Executive Support Technology Officer enters records. 2:27 p.m. External device copies restricted folder from shared workstation. 2:33 p.m. Officer leaves records. 2:39 p.m. Sade exits legal floor. Device identifier registered to executive support. Sade's knees almost failed again. The evidence was simple, clean, visible. Ronke spoke quickly. A shared terminal can still be accessed remotely. Those logs do not prove intent. Dare looked at her. They prove Sade was not physically present. Device-level logs and corridor footage show who was. Then investigate the technology officer. We are. You cannot connect his action to my office. Not yet conclusively, Dare said. That is why the evidence is preserved and why I am not presenting a final finding. Bode nodded once. A fair answer. Not theater. Continue. Dare displayed the complaint status audit trail. 64 records had been altered through an executive administrator credential. Most changes occurred in batches of 20 or more within seconds. 38 physical letters were marked previously resolved without a scanned reply. Sade's envelope was one of them. Bode turned to Ronke. Who controls that administrator credential? Executive support. Several officers have delegated access. Who approves delegated access? I do. And who receives appeals concerning executive correspondence? Compliance and my office. So the office controlling the complaints also controls the appeal route. It is an efficiency measure. Dare changed the slide. Conflict of interest indicator. Payments from the benefit transition contractor to a consulting company associated with a close relative of an executive sponsor. Ronke's face lost color. This is defamatory. Dare remained calm. It is an indicator requiring independent investigation. No conclusion has been reached. Bode looked at the board secretary, who had entered the hall during the presentation. Has the audit committee been notified? Yes, sir. The chair called at 3:18. We attempted to reach your office. Bode's eyes moved to Ronke. My office received no call. Ronke straightened her shoulders. You were in protected rehearsal time. A board audit emergency is protected from me. I was trying to prevent unverified accusations from disrupting the event. Bode held Ruth's page in one hand. You prevented this letter on Monday. It was repetitive correspondence. You sent it for shredding. It was classified as resolved. You opened it today. It was investigation material. Where are the missing pages? Ronke said nothing. Bode's voice dropped. Where are they? Her silence answered more loudly than words. The host moved away from the award table. A glass slipped from a waiter's tray and shattered near the back of the hall. Nobody turned. Sade remembered the original note inside her handbag. She reached slowly so security would not misunderstand. "Sir." Bode looked at her. "Mrs. Johnson gave me something before I came. She said I should give it only to you." Sade removed the folded paper. Yusuf stepped forward, but Bode lifted a hand. She walked towards him. Her torn blouse exposed the seam at her shoulder. Her knee was dusty. One shoe had lost its small buckle. The difference between them could not have been clearer. Cobalt blue power, burnt orange courage. She placed the note in his hand. Bode unfolded it. "Ma Ruth, if I ever have power here, nobody will have to beg before they are treated like a human being." Bode. September 14, 2003. His lips parted. No sound came. The powerful man on magazine covers disappeared. In his place stood the hungry young worker who had once been too ashamed to order food. He saw Ruth placing a covered plate near him after the canteen closed. He saw her arguing with the clinic cashier when he collapsed. He heard himself promise that power would never make him deaf. Then he saw Sade on her knees in his ballroom while people called her a thief. He saw his own signature on the morning approval. He saw the award waiting behind him, human-centered leadership. The words became unbearable. Bode covered his mouth. His shoulders shook once. Then again. Tears ran down his face, not elegant tears, not the single tear of a public man controlling an image. He broke. The microphone slipped from his hand and struck the carpeted step. Nobody moved to pick it up. Bode lowered himself onto the edge of the stage. "I signed it," he said. His voice was barely audible. The ballroom speakers still carried it. "I signed the termination this morning." Ronke stepped forward. "Sir, you signed based on approved reports. You were misled." Bode looked up at her. "I was responsible for deciding which reports were enough. You could not know. I asked if urgent cases existed, and I said none were verified. You lied." Ronke's face hardened. "I protected the company from panic. Do you think investors will understand 200 old files? Do you think they will care about legacy paperwork when 4,800 current jobs depend on refinancing?" Sade stared at her. There it was. The belief beneath everything. Some people could be sacrificed because they were fewer, older, and less visible. Bode stood slowly. "You did not protect the company. You protected a number. I protected your strategy. No, you protected your reward." Ronke pointed at Dare. "He has not completed an investigation." "That is true," Bode said. "So I will not declare you guilty of fraud in this hall." For one brief second, relief touched her face. Then he continued. "But I have enough verified facts to remove your access, preserve evidence, and suspend you from executive duty pending independent review." Ronke's mouth fell open. "You cannot humiliate me because a contract girl created noise." Sade flinched at the phrase. Bode did not. "The noise is evidence." He turned to the board secretary. "Contact independent counsel. Preserve Mrs. Williams' devices, executive correspondence records, and contractor communications. No deletion, no remote reset." "Yes, sir." "To be clear," Bode added, "this is an administrative preservation step, not a finding of criminal guilt." Ronke looked around the hall. Only hours earlier, people had moved when she lifted a finger. Assistants had rushed to her side. Directors had waited for her approval. Now nobody did. She reached for her phone. Yusuf stepped forward. "Ma, please place the company device on the table." She stared at him. "You too?" His face carried regret. "This is a preservation order." Ronke laughed bitterly. "Yesterday you were taking orders from me. Yes. And today you think you have morality? No, Ma." Yusuf's voice was low. "Today I understand that obedience did not remove my responsibility yesterday." He looked towards Sade. "I used force against a woman who had made no physical threat. I should have asked more questions before carrying out the order." The admission cost him. It showed in his face. Bode turned to the benefit administrator's representative, seated near the front. "Call your operations director." The man stood quickly. "Sir, we need written instruction. You will have it within 10 minutes. Until then, initiate an emergency administrative hold on batch 41. I do not have authority to suspend the whole batch verbally. Then call the person who does." The representative took out his phone. Bode addressed the board secretary. "Prepare a written direction, 90-day temporary continuation for all 211 cases. No termination at midnight. 17 urgent treatment cases to manual review tonight. The company will bear interim verified costs while eligibility is checked." Finance representatives began whispering. One director rose. "Bode, that creates an unbudgeted liability." Bode looked at him. "The liability already exists. We merely hid it beneath the word savings." The director sat down. Bode called legal to the stage. He requested that the audit committee chair join by secure video. Within 12 minutes, the ballroom screen showed her from an airport lounge in Abuja. She confirmed the preliminary audit hold. Independent counsel confirmed that the company could preserve access and pause the benefit termination without deciding final liability that night. The process moved quickly because the deadline was real. But it remained a process. At 8:14 p.m., the benefit administrator confirmed the batch hold in writing. At 8:26, the first urgent case was restored to active review. At 8:39, all 211 profiles displayed temporary continuation through January 8, 2026. 4 hours and 20 minutes remained before midnight. Bode asked Sade for Ruth's clinic. She told him. He called. A nurse answered and explained that Ruth was resting and could not take a lengthy call. Bode asked to leave a message. The nurse placed the phone near Ruth's bed. Bode stood in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by people who had come to celebrate him. "Ma Ruth," he said, his voice breaking again. "I read it." He looked at the old promise in his hand. I was almost too late. Ruth's eyelids moved, but she did not speak. The nurse listened. "I have paused the termination for everybody," Bode continued. "Not only you. Everybody. There will be an independent review. I am sorry. I am sorry that you had to write 3 times. I am sorry that somebody with no power had to fight through my own people to reach me." He stopped because the next words would not come. The nurse quietly said, "She can hear you, sir." Bode closed his eyes. "Tell her I remember the promise." He ended the call. Then he turned to the award behind him. The host waited uncertainly. Bode picked up the glass trophy. For 1 second, guests thought he might continue the ceremony. Instead, he placed it back on the table. "I cannot receive this tonight," he said. A leader should not accept praise for an open door when a worker was dragged across the floor trying to reach it. He faced Sade. "I cannot repair what happened by giving you a public compliment. Your suspension must be independently reviewed. Your wages must not be withheld without lawful basis. And the allegation against you must be corrected wherever it was circulated if the evidence confirms what we have seen tonight." Dare spoke. "The evidence already confirms she was not present at the workstation during the download." Bode nodded. "Then issue an interim written clearance before she leaves this building." Sade's eyes filled. She did not smile. Too much had happened for smiling. "Sir," she said, "please do not make this only about clearing my name." Bode looked at her. "There are 211 people," she continued. "Some do not know you. Some never met Mrs. Johnson. They should not need a personal history with the CEO before the system works." Ruth's lesson had traveled through her. The hall listened. Bode nodded slowly. "You are right." Ronke stood near the stage under Yusuf's supervision, stripped of her company phone and executive badge. Anger twisted her face. "You think she cares about those people?" she said. "She wants a permanent job. That is why she created this performance." Sade turned towards her. For the first time all evening, her voice was calm. "Ma, the truth did not destroy this company's reputation. The decision to hide people did." Ronke's lips parted. No reply came. The audience did not cheer. That would have made the moment cheap. Instead, a retired driver in the back row stood slowly and began to clap once. Then twice. Others joined. Not for Bode, for Sade, for Dare, for Yusuf's admission, for Ruth, resting in a clinic room miles away. For every person who had been told that their suffering was too inconvenient to reach the stage. Sade remained standing in her torn orange blouse. She did not bow. She did not kneel. She stood at her full height. The ballroom did not return to celebration. Dinner remained untouched on many tables. The band packed its instruments without playing the final set. Guests left in low voices, carrying a story very different from the one they had expected to tell. Inside a small conference room beside the ballroom, the work continued. Independent counsel joined by video. The audit committee chair stayed connected from Abuja. The board secretary created a written chronology while Dare uploaded protected copies of the evidence. Sade received a one-page interim clearance at 10:07 p.m. It stated that badge data, corridor footage, and device logs did not support the allegation that she had downloaded restricted files. It also instructed the recruitment agency to suspend every adverse reference issued in connection with the allegation. Sade read the paper twice. Then she asked for the exact time of issue to be added. The board secretary looked surprised. "Is that necessary?" "Yes, Ma. The adverse reference was already circulated today." The secretary added 10:07 p.m. and initialed the correction, a record. Always a record. Bode watched her from across the table. He had removed his jacket. His white shirt was creased. His face looked older than it had 3 hours earlier. "Miss Adeyemi," he said, "the company car will take you home." Sade shook her head. "I need to return to the clinic. Then it will take you there." "That is fine, sir." He seemed to want to say more. An apology, perhaps. A promise. But Sade had heard enough promises for one night. "Sir," she said. "Has the temporary continuation reached all the profiles?" Dare answered. The administrator confirmed all 211 at 8:39. "We are verifying the urgent 17 separately." "How many are active now?" 13 confirmed active. 4 have identity mismatches that need manual correction. But the company has issued a payment undertaking, so treatment should not be blocked. Sade nodded. Only then did some tension leave her shoulders. At 10:32, Yusuf came to the conference room door. "Miss Adeyemi, may I speak with you?" She followed him into the corridor. He stood with both hands clasped behind his back. "I am sorry," he said. Sade waited. "I received an instruction to remove you. I knew the security basis was unclear. I still acted. When the officers forced you down, I did not stop them quickly enough. You did stop the envelope from disappearing yesterday. That does not cancel what I did today." "No," he accepted the answer. "I will give a written statement, not only about Mrs. Williams, about my own decision." Sade looked at him. "Thank you." He glanced at the tear in her blouse. "The hotel has a first aid room. Your knee should be checked. I will check it at the clinic." Yusuf nodded. As she walked away, he called after her. "Miss Adeyemi." She turned. "You asked me to sign for the folder. I almost refused. But you signed. Yes. That signature mattered." Yusuf looked down. It was the first kindness she had offered him that night. At 11:18, Sade reached the clinic. Ruth was awake. A nurse had already informed her that the benefit authorization was restored. The clinic had received a payment undertaking for the procedure. Still, Ruth did not ask about money first. She looked at Sade's torn blouse and swollen knee. "They touched you?" "I am fine, Ma. Do not tell me fine when your cloth is crying." Sade laughed through sudden tears. The sound broke something open inside her. She sat beside the bed and wept. Not neatly, not quietly. She cried for the accusation, the search of her bag, the recruiter's rejection, the fear of rent, the marble beneath her knee, and the moment nobody in the hall knew whether she was a thief. Ruth held her hand. "Did he read it?" "Yes, all of it." Ronke destroyed some pages, but he saw enough. Dare presented the audit summary. The termination was paused for 90 days. For everybody. For everybody. Ruth closed her eyes. "Thank God. He called you. I heard." "What did you think?" Ruth opened her eyes again. "I thought he sounded like the young man from the canteen. Will you forgive him?" Ruth looked towards the dark window. "Forgiveness is not the first work. Repair is." Sade was quiet. "If he repairs what his leadership damaged," Ruth continued, "then forgiveness will have somewhere to stand." At 11:59 p.m., the old benefit platform closed. Batch 41 did not disappear. All 211 cases remained under temporary continuation. Midnight came. Nobody died because a screen changed color. No dramatic siren sounded. But 17 people kept access to treatment that might otherwise have been delayed. 194 others kept the right to appeal without first losing protection. Sometimes justice arrived as a crowd cheering in a ballroom. Sometimes it arrived as a small green word beside a name, active. The following Monday, the board announced an independent review led by external counsel and a benefits control specialist with no prior relationship to the company. The notice did not call Ronke a criminal. It stated that she had been suspended from executive duties pending investigation. Her system access remained disabled. Her devices and relevant correspondence were preserved under legal hold. Bode asked to step aside from direct oversight of the review because his own decisions were part of the matter. The board agreed. For the first time in years, he sat in a meeting where he could not control the final report. It was uncomfortable. It was necessary. The investigation lasted 11 weeks. Investigators interviewed 53 current and former staff members. They reviewed more than 12,000 emails, 742 complaint entries, mailroom registers, contractor invoices, access logs, and meeting notes. The findings were not as simple as one wicked woman and one innocent company. Ronke had deliberately ordered 64 complete benefit files to be closed or reclassified. She had instructed staff to route executive complaints through her office. She had opened Ruth's letter and destroyed 3 pages after learning that the audit committee was attempting to contact Bode. The investigation also found that a consulting company, controlled by Ronke's elder brother, had received payments from a subcontractor involved in the benefit migration. Ronke had not declared that relationship. Those matters were referred to the appropriate authorities for further assessment. But the report did not claim a conviction that had not happened. Facts first. Process next. Judgment where law allowed it. The remaining 147 benefit failures came from broader weakness. Old service records had not been digitized properly. Human Resources accepted the administrator's summary without testing enough individual cases. Finance rewarded savings without measuring denied access. Legal approved an appeal clause without asking how retirees would pay during the appeal. Internal audit identified warning signs, but did not escalate them quickly, and Bode signed a final approval after reviewing a summary rather than demanding the exception list. The report stated the truth plainly. No single person created every failure. Many people helped the failure survive. Ronke's employment was terminated after a disciplinary process. Her performance award was cancelled. The company began recovery proceedings for payments linked to undisclosed conflicts. She was not marched through the office in handcuffs. No judge sentenced her inside a YouTube ending. She lost the position she had used to silence people. She lost the promotion built on hidden harm. And she faced a process she could no longer control. That was accountability. Dare received a formal warning for delaying the audit escalation. His promotion review was postponed for 1 year. Some staff thought he should have been celebrated because he finally spoke. Dare disagreed. "At the end, I did my duty," he told his team. "The problem is that I waited until somebody with less protection was already suffering. Speaking late is better than never speaking. It is not the same as speaking on time." He helped design a new escalation route that allowed internal audit to reach the audit committee without passing through executive management. Yusuf was suspended for 10 working days for disproportionate handling and failure to establish a clear security basis before removing Sade. When he returned, he proposed a written force standard for company events. Every removal order now required a reason connected to safety or lawful access, not vague language, such as reputational disruption. Security staff received authority to pause and verify an instruction that appeared unrelated to safety. Some managers complained that the rule would slow response. Yusuf answered them. "Speed is not professionalism when we are running in the wrong direction." The 2 guards who forced Sade down received retraining and disciplinary warnings. They also apologized to her in person. Sade did not pretend the apology erased the memory. She accepted it without promising forgetfulness. Balogun Allied Services restored all 211 benefit cases for full review. Within 3 months, 198 were confirmed eligible without interruption. 9 required corrected service records. 4 involved separate pension status disputes and received interim cover while mediation continued. The company paid verified medical costs caused by the improper closures. It refunded transport and document replacement expenses to retirees who had submitted the same papers repeatedly. It sent individual letters explaining what had happened and what remedy applied. No general press statement replaced those letters. No slogan replaced payment. No awards ceremony replaced repair. Bode surrendered his annual performance bonus to a remediation fund, but Ruth refused to let the gesture become the center of the story. "Money is good," she told him during their first meeting after her procedure. "But do not use your pocket to avoid changing your office." They met in a plain conference room at the company, not Bode's executive suite. Ruth wore lavender and walked slowly with a cane. The procedure had gone well, but recovery was not magic. She became tired after 20 minutes and needed water. Bode stood when she entered. "Ma, Ruth." She looked at him for a long time. "You have added weight," she said. He laughed once, then covered his face as tears came again. Ruth did not rush to comfort him. She allowed him to feel what he had come to feel. "I failed you," he said. "You failed more than me. I know. Do you?" He placed the surviving page of her letter and the old meal card on the table. "I thought being a good leader meant choosing good people and reading reports. I did not see that I had built a gate around myself." Ruth sat down. "A gate does not become open because the owner says, 'My door is open. Somebody must be able to reach it.'" Bode nodded. "I want you to chair the new Rhetoric Advisory Council." "No." He blinked. "You have not heard the terms." "I have heard enough terms in this life." I will serve for 6 months to help establish it. After that, members should elect their own chair. Do not turn me into another special connection. I thought it would honor you. Ruth leaned forward. Do not honor me with a special chair. Build a system where nobody needs a special connection. Bode lowered his eyes. Yes, Ma. She tapped the table. And stop calling workers your family if you will not give them the rights of adults. Families can hide abuse. Build rules. Build appeal. Build records. Bode almost smiled. You have not changed. Why should age remove sense? For the first time, they both laughed. Sade's case was resolved separately. The company paid her withheld wages, the cost of the documents she had printed, medical treatment for her injured knee and compensation, agreed through mediation for the false accusation and adverse references. The recruitment agency sent correction notices to every client that had received the warning. Sade demanded copies. She received them. Bode offered her a permanent position directly in his office. She refused. I do not want my career to depend on being close to you, sir. The answer surprised him. What do you want? A fair recruitment process for a role that matches my skills, and the same protection for the next person who raises a concern. 3 weeks later, an independent panel interviewed her for Records Integrity Officer. She completed a practical assessment, a policy exercise, and 2 interviews. Other candidates were considered. Sade earned the position. Her new salary was better, but it did not turn her into a millionaire. She still used public transport on some days. She still calculated rent before buying new shoes. Her aunt still reminded her to switch off the light. Real change did not require a convoy. It required stability. The company created an Office of Workforce Integrity, reporting jointly to the Audit Committee and the board's People Committee. Complaints received an acknowledgement within 72 hours. Closed cases required evidence of response. Random samples were reviewed monthly. Whistleblowers could report outside their direct management chain. Bode began holding monthly listening sessions with 12 randomly selected workers from different pay grades. At the first session, an office assistant complained that executives used the staff lift during peak hours, leaving cleaners and messengers waiting with equipment. The issue sounded small compared with medical cover. Bode was tempted to smile. Then he remembered that power often revealed itself in what leaders called small. The lift policy changed. At the second session, drivers raised unpaid waiting allowances. At the third, contract cleaners described receiving safety gloves in the wrong sizes. Not every complaint became a scandal. That was the point. A healthy system solved ordinary problems before desperation turned them into public emergencies. 3 months after the anniversary, the Office of Workforce Integrity opened on the 6th floor. Sade placed Ruth's repaired envelope inside a glass case near the entrance. The destroyed pages were represented by blank paper, a reminder that missing records also told a story. Beneath the envelope was a small plaque. No letter becomes small because the person who wrote it has no power. Bode attended the opening, but there was no ribbon-cutting photograph of him holding giant scissors. Sade had insisted that the first hour remain a working session. At 9:17, a woman in a grey cleaning uniform appeared at the doorway. She held a folded payslip. "Good morning, Ma," she said to Sade. "Hope no problem. They said this is where people bring complaints." "Yes. Please come in." The woman remained near the door. "It is only small. Our overtime for last month is missing. My supervisor said we should wait." "How many workers?" 11. "Do you have the duty schedule?" "Yes, please sit." The cleaner looked at the chairs. "Here?" "Yes, here. My uniform is dirty. The chair can be cleaned. Your time cannot be returned." The woman sat. Sade took out an intake form, wrote the date, and recorded the documents received. She gave the cleaner a copy with a reference number and the expected response time. No cameras flashed, no music played, nobody cried. Outside the glass office, Bode watched for a moment. Then he moved on without entering. He had finally understood that leadership was not being present in every act of justice. Sometimes leadership meant building a room where justice could happen without needing him. 1 week after the Integrity Office opened, Bode addressed the entire company at a staff town hall. This time, there was no anniversary backdrop. No award stood beside him. The stage held only a lectern, a bottle of water, and 3 screens displaying the reform timetable. Workers joined from depots, warehouses, project sites, and branch offices. Contract staff were included. Retirees could watch through the association center. Bode began without music. "I have been advised to say the incident revealed a breakdown beneath my level," he said. "That language is convenient. It is also incomplete." He paused. "I approved the structure. I accepted the summary. I rewarded cost reduction without demanding proof that people were protected. Mrs. Williams concealed information, and the investigation has addressed that. But leadership cannot take credit for every success and then become too distant to own failure." The front row, Sade watched quietly. Bode displayed the reform deadlines. A new independent hotline by January 15. Full legacy record audit by February 28. Quarterly publication of complaint volumes, closure times and appeal outcomes. Contractor staff included in whistleblower protection. Executive bonuses tied not only to savings and revenue, but also to verified harm indicators. Then, he did something his advisors had opposed. He displayed the number of complaints that had reached senior management before Sade found Ruth's letter. 0. Below it, he displayed the number that existed in company systems. 211. "The gap between these two numbers," he said, "is where leadership failed." A warehouse worker asked whether executives who approved the benefit change would face consequences. Bode answered that performance reviews were underway and that responsibility would not stop with Ronke. A contract driver asked whether temporary workers could really use the new complaint channel without losing their placements. Sade took the microphone. "The policy now requires notice to the Integrity Office before any placement is ended within 90 days of a protected report," she said. "That does not make anybody immune from genuine misconduct. It means the company must show the reason is real and separately documented." The driver nodded, but he did not look fully convinced. Policies written after harm always arrived with a trust deficit. Trust would need evidence too. In the months that followed, the Integrity Office received 136 reports. Some were serious. Some were misunderstandings. 29 were substantiated. 41 required process correction. 52 were resolved through explanation and documented follow-up. 14 remained open at the end of the quarter. Sade refused pressure to describe every complainant as brave or every manager as wicked. Sometimes payroll mistakes were errors. Sometimes supervisors lacked training. Sometimes workers also made claims the evidence did not support. Respect meant investigating fairly in both directions. One afternoon, Bode asked why the integrity dashboard showed 14 open cases in red. "Would amber not look less alarming to the board?" he asked. Sade looked at him. "Are they overdue?" "Yes." "Then red is accurate," Bode almost argued. Then he remembered the old report with its comforting percentage. "Leave it red," he said. That small decision mattered because reform was not one dramatic night. It was the daily choice not to make bad news easier to swallow. Ruth attended the Rhetoric Advisory Council twice each month during her 6-month term. She insisted that meetings include people whose claims were still disputed, not only those who had received payment. She also required every action item to have a named owner and a date. When everybody owns a problem, she said, nobody owns it. At the end of 6 months, members elected their own chair, as she had demanded. Bode offered Ruth a permanent advisory title. She refused again. "My son, do not decorate me," she told him. "Listen to the next person before she needs to become important." Sade kept the burnt orange blouse. Her aunt repaired the torn shoulder with a neat line of pale blue thread. It was no longer suitable for work, but Sade could not throw it away. The blouse reminded her that dignity did not come from expensive fabric. It came from refusing to let another person's contempt define what one deserved. She also kept the first warning letter Ronke had issued. Beside her disputed signature, the time remained visible. 8:31 a.m. Sometimes new staff asked why she saved documents connected to the worst week of her life. Sade would answer, "Because memory can be argued with. A record makes the argument work harder." On the first anniversary of the night at Crown Meridian, there was no gala. The company marked the date by publishing its first independent workforce integrity report. The report included failures, overdue cases, and money paid in remedies. Bode's communications team wanted a polished campaign around it. He rejected the idea. "Accountability is not a product launch," he said. Sade read the report before publication and found 3 sentences written in passive voice. Benefits were incorrectly terminated. Correspondence was not escalated. Force was used during an event. She returned the draft. "Who terminated the benefits?" she asked. "Who failed to escalate? Who used force?" The final report named the responsible functions and decisions, without exposing private individuals unnecessarily. It did not hide action behind grammar. That evening, Sade visited Ruth in Surulere. The old tin box sat on the table between them. Inside lay Bode's meal card, the original promise and the first registered post receipt. Ruth poured malt into 2 glasses. "Are you happy now?" she asked. Sade considered the question. "I am grateful. Happy is too simple." Ruth nodded. "Good answer. Do you think people truly changed?" "Some did. Some only changed because the rules changed. Both can protect somebody." Sade smiled. Outside, evening traffic murmured beyond the compound wall. There was no dramatic music. No convoy arrived. Nobody announced that justice had become permanent. It never did. Justice required maintenance. Records had to be checked. Leaders had to remain reachable. Workers had to know their rights. Witnesses had to speak before courage became more expensive than silence. Ruth lifted her glass. "To the next lit letter," she said. Sade touched her glass against it. "And to reading it on time." Ruth's letter had not saved the company because it made a powerful man cry. Tears alone repair nothing. The letter mattered because one temporary worker protected it. One frightened auditor finally spoke. One security officer admitted his own failure. One retired woman refused special treatment. And one chief executive accepted that ignorance did not erase responsibility. Power often says harm was invisible. But harm is rarely invisible to the person carrying it. It becomes invisible only when everybody with authority chooses not to look. This story is presented for reflection and education. It should not be treated as an allegation against any identifiable person, company, or institution. Its purpose is to examine what happens when power becomes difficult to reach, when silence is rewarded, and when human beings are reduced to numbers. In my view, the true measure of leadership is not how respectfully a person treats the powerful. It is how quickly that leader responds when someone with nothing to offer asks to be heard.